Coming up this weekend, a possible fight of the year contender. Both of these guys have those accolades on their resume. We have the former interim lightweight champ, Dustin Poirier, taking on the three-time Bellator lightweight champ, Michael Chandler. And we said this from the open. I mean, for Michael Chandler, a fight of the year 10 years apart, one against Justin Gaethje, unsuccessful in that matchup, but he did get the win over Eddie Alvarez years ago. And for Alvarez, that fight, 2011 was that matchup against Alvarez.
Is it fair to say Michael Chandler is at the hardest level of competition since entering the UFC as any fighter we've ever seen?
Yeah, it's absolutely wild if you look at it right there. I mean, for Chandler, he debuts against Dan Hooker, knocks him out promptly, gets a title shot against Charles Oliveira, looks like he's on his way in the first round to getting the win, gets finished in the second round, takes on Justin Gaethje, and his last time out, beats the aging legend Tony Ferguson.
Some of the better fighters we have ever seen at 155 pounds. That's the thing for Michael Chandler. You know what, Craig? High five. We should give ourselves a bit of a pat on the back because a lot of people were after us after we said he was going to lose to Charles Oliveira after his second fight in the UFC. They said, oh, there's no way you guys would have thought he was going to get knocked out. But listen, to our credit, we were big Michael Chandler fans when he was over in Bellator. Like, I watched every Michael Chandler fight he had in Bellator, basically post Eddie Alvarez on when I really liked MMA. So I do feel like I do have a decent read on Chandler, and this is the read I can give you. He has thunderous power in his hands. His nickname is Iron for a reason. Iron Mike Tyson is normally who you think of.
He's one of the more athletic fighters you're going to find in MMA.
Kid's built like a brick shithouse. Now, at 36 years of age, though, you don't have to worry about how many miles are still left in the odometer because he's been in so many crazy fights now that at a certain point, it does take a bit away from you, and that's always been the thing about Michael Chandler, and we have talked about this at length throughout his UFC tenure. If he hits you first, he's going to win. If you hit him first, though, that's when it does get interesting, because for Chandler, he is a really well-rounded fighter. I haven't even talked about his offensive wrestling, his submission ability, and those are very high level, too, but for the most part, when you think about Chandler, I guess you do think about his wrestling, but you think about his thunderous punching power, and like you said, his overall physicality. I just worry about how he's going to be able to eat shots from a guy like Dustin Poirier, because you can go back and look at some of Michael Chandler's fights he had in Bellator. Think about a guy like Goichi Yamauchi, who I know had to move up in weight, and we can get into that, that's a whole conversation for another time, but Goiti's not on Dustin Poirier's level. Like, Dustin Poirier is one of the greatest lightweights of all time. He's been in Fight of the Nights with some of the other greatest lightweights of all time. He was able to hurt Michael Chandler with a hook kick. Tony Ferguson was able to hurt him with a jab in the opening round of their fight. And again, to Chandler's credit, he did win both of those fights, but you can't just look at the result and forget about how you ended up going to that result.
And a lot of people pointed to it before Chandler came into the UFC. It was, well, he just got knocked out, little over a year ago over Patricio Pitbull in the Revenge Tour fight because Chandler knocked out Petroski. Patricio looking to become double champ. Patricio gets the win, and if you consider it after that, win over Sidney Outlaw, win over Benson Henderson, but what do they really mean in the grand scheme of things? For Chandler, proved the doubters wrong, 2-2 in the UFC, 2009 NCAA Division I All-American at Missouri, and if you look at it for Dustin Poirier, Matt talking about Michael Chandler and the road miles, Dustin Poirier's been rode hard and put up wet, I would say.
The difference is, though, he doesn't get dropped by the majority of clean shots that he eats. Like, Poirier has eaten some big shots in his UFC career, and I always rolled my eyes at this because I thought it was ridiculous. Like, when our channel really blew up, it was when Poirier fought Conor McGregor the second time and the third time. People were down for those videos, Craig, I remember it. And I would tell anybody who listened, hey, Dustin Poirier is going to win this fight because everybody said, oh, well, he's not durable. That's what Conor McGregor said. He's got no chin. That might have been the case down at 145 pounds, but I think we all know that big weight cuts come with bad chins. At 155 pounds, Dustin Poirier has been in a number of Fight of the Nights, and you're right. At a certain point, the hourglass is going to run out, but at least up until this point, I would say at this weight class, he's proven to be the more durable guy out of these two, but I think this is one of the more heavyweight, non-heavyweight fights we've ever seen in the UFC.
No, there's way more technique involved. But what I will say to Dustin Poirier bumping the hot sauce. I think he's got 4 different kinds of his own now. I've tried it before. I don't know if he's ever had Da Bomb Beyond Insanity. I don't know if he's ever had Steve-O's Butthole Destroyer. Because, I mean, if you look at it for Poirier, you consider the hotness of some of those hot sauces. He's got the KO one. Nothing beats Da Bomb.
His are good, though. They're tasty.
Yeah, the Steve-O one actually is really tasty. The Butthole Destroyer, and then he's got the Steve Haas's hot sauce for your butthole. That one's just, you can use that for daily use.
I was talking about Poirier sauce.
It's very good. But when you do focus in on this matchup, Matt, I think there's a couple of differentiating factors. I mean, for Poirier, 22-6 with a no contest in the UFC. Yes, he's fought Eddie Alvarez. One's a no contest, one's a knockout win. what was it, 2 fights after the no contest, he ends up fighting Alvarez, beating him again. He has a fight against Khabib that he loses. He beat Justin Gaethje. Chandler lost to Justin Gaethje. MMA math, we'll play it where it is. But what I do look at for Chandler is he loves that full extension, feet planted, overhand right to land. If Poirier does a skip to my Louis, right hand dominant as a southpaw, he can land the check right hook on that.
And that's the thing too, if you go back and watch the Poirier-Gaethje fight, I know that was a tough fight, it was a 5-round fight, and Gaethje in round 3 before Poirier knocks him out in the 4th, hurts Poirier with a good shot over the top. Poirier has wicked boxing defense in that fight, though. Like, there's a point in that fight where Gaethje throws, like, 3 haymakers. Poirier reads them all perfectly and just knows the third one's coming, moves his head out of the way with his hands down, and, like, blows a kiss at the punch as it's going by. When Poirier isn't in his brawl mode where he squares up to his opponent, he does have good boxing defense, especially on the back foot. And I do worry about Chandler's size in this division. I know it's not something we talk about a lot, but Michael Chandler's not a big lightweight by any means. And I know Poirier is a former featherweight, so you don't necessarily think about him as a big guy in this weight division, but I'll be curious to see these guys when they do square off, because Poirier is a big guy, especially against a lot of these fighters. He was much thicker than Charles Oliveira when he fought against him. I know Max Holloway was moving up in weight, but the size against Holloway was a big conversation too, so I'll be curious to see how these guys match up physically, because I do think Chandler has a big wrestling advantage on his side. I'll just be curious to see if he really wants to go for it, though, because there is a part of Chandler that likes the fight of the nights and that will get into the brawl, and if he does get into that type of a fight, that's probably going to lead to his detriment, because I think if Michael Chandler wants to have a lot of success, it's going to have to mix in the takedowns with his overhands and make this an MMA fight, because I know Poirier is good at threatening with submissions off his back, but I still think Michael Chandler's the better grappler for grappling's sake if it hits the mat.
I think size-wise, Chandler's going to have a lot of advantages in this matchup, but if you look at it for Poirier, I mean, I mentioned the record in the UFC, joined after a WEC stint in 2011, beat title hopeful Josh Grisby in the debut. And then, Grisby didn't get that fight with Jose Aldo. But if you focus in for Dustin Poirier, you look at all the good, you look at some of the bad. He's training over at American Top Team with Johnny Eblen for this fight, Bellator middleweight champ, as well as Mateusz Gamrot to get ready for the wrestling of Chandler.
A pretty good wrestler, yeah.
The flip for Chandler's MMA wrestling, I have 2 fights for you that if you want to go back and watch them to get ready for a fight with Poirier, you might go, well, geez, he's going to have success. The second fight against Brent Primus is the one where, hey, the first one, was it a fluke? Chandler was a giant favorite against Primus in the first fight. He has that weird Liz Frank, is it a knee, is it a foot thing?
That weird nerve thing, yeah.
But in the second fight against Brent Primus, other than Primus having early success and getting the back, it's all Chandler, all ground and pound for 4 rounds of that fight. The fight that he has against, Brandon Gertz, where he picks him up and he slams him and he dislocates his shoulder as he does it and he gets the win. Now, Chandler's a big favorite against Brandon Gertz in that fight. But those are just the skills that he possesses, and that's kind of like the cupcake under the icing. The icing's great. You see the knockouts, you see the striking. The body of the game is the wrestling, and if he brings it into a fight against Poirier where he has a decided advantage in the wrestling, you win that fight. Islam Makhachev's next, unless Alexander Volkanovski gets the party.
I guess my question really is, they're not trying to play MMA math, but Chandler wasn't able to go out there and really dominate Justin Gaethje with his wrestling, and I know Gaethje has the wrestling background, but it's not like Justin Gaethje's some lights-out defensive grappler, and I know Gaethje, let's say Gaethje has better takedown defense than Dustin Poirier, I'll give you that. I don't think he's as good of a defensive grappler as Poirier, though, so I will be curious just to see what this fight looks like once it does hit the mat, because I agree with you, I think Chandler is the better fighter if he gets on top, and that's a position where he'll have a lot of success, but I don't think Poirier is some net zero off his back. I think he will be able to threaten enough to at least get this fight back up to the feet, and on the feet, this is a very interesting one, because both guys possess enough power to knock each other out. I don't think you need me to tell you that if you've ever watched either one of them, so this fight is just so good on so many levels. I'm curious. Neither guy's been able to fight Islam yet. These are 2 of the few who haven't been able to. Do you think the winner of this does get that next title shot, or does the winner of this probably have to fight Benil to really cement who's next?
They get a money belt fight because Islam Makhachev pay-per-views are going to need to have a bigger main event. But when we do look at the odds for this one,
it's a no.
You focus in on it for Poirier, open -200, -205 right now. Chandler, open +170, +175 or thereabouts right now. We have a look over at Fight Night Picks. We threw it out there to you in the community tab. We'll update the votes on this one to see what you're thinking. And so far, Matt, it's not that close. We're talking 69% for Dustin Poirier, 31% for Michael Chandler. Your comments down below. Al is saying Chandler will find a way, but it's not going to be easy. Bill saying I think Chandler can win if he mixes in the takedowns. Poirier striking so much more precise. He's going to get lit up if he tries to stand with him the whole fight. Chad's torn. Gonna go with the more active fighter, Chandler by decision, and the Wretch saying Dustin by TKO. Chandler's chin won't hold up. So Matt, the odds are with Poirier. The votes are with Poirier. I mentioned it. Overhand extension, Chandler right hand, check right hook, Poirier, but the check right hook's there most of the night. The boxing combinations favor Poirier. He's got the speed, he's got the power. Chandler has the wrestling, the overhand right, and a good leg kick to go with it. Who do you have in the pick?
Iron isn't the only thing that Michael Chandler has in common with Mike Tyson. It's not just the nickname. He does duck a lot when he throws his punches, and that's the problem. Justin Gaethje was able to catch him with a really clean uppercut when they were fighting. What's one of Dustin Poirier's best punches? He's got that left uppercut that he likes to follow up with the right hook. It's a really basic boxing combination, but it is one that I can see having a lot of success against Michael Chandler. I admit that Chandler could go out there and have a ton of success with his wrestling. I still think he's going to go out there with the wrestling shoes for 15 pure minutes. And I do think in the striking exchanges, it's going to be dangerous enough for Michael Chandler to where I'm going to predict Dustin Poirier. And the wild thing too is, Poirier's been around for a while, and I could see the first person to ever give him back-to-back losses being Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler, two pretty darn good fighters, but that's just a wild stat about Dustin Poirier that hasn't really got noticed. Like, the fact that he has had such a crazy strength of schedule throughout his UFC tenure without suffering back-to-back losses is really impressive. But again, if anyone would do it, it's probably Oliveira and Michael Chandler.
And it's definitely a big factor when you do look at the countdown. It's like the first scene there is, Chandler, could he be the one to earn Dustin Poirier a second consecutive loss? I look at this one and you look at the fight against Charles Oliveira. For Michael Chandler, great first round, second round gets finished. Dustin Poirier, great first round, second round he gets ground out for a lot of control. Third round he gets submitted. So for Poirier, that's a tough way to go out. And for Chandler, there's definitely avenues there. I do like the boxing out of Poirier. I ever so slightly edge Poirier. I love the odds on Michael Chandler. So maybe there's going to be a play there. Maybe that's a commentary for question mark kicks. The side kick for this card, 2 hours. The question mark kicks, 2 hours before the prelims. The side kick during the main card. You can hang out with us. We're going to be watching this fight, a possible fight of the year contender at lightweight. Both of us with Poirier in the matchup. 2 title fights up at the top. Carla Esparza taking on Zhang Wei Li in the main event, the trilogy. Alex Pereira challenging Israel Adesanya. It's going to be great. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.